Roger is a very successful man. He will take care of Mom and our kids like his own. My wife declared this after she and her lover framed me for abuse and plotted to kill me in my own bakery. They never knew I heard everything and that justice was waiting. My name is Ben Robertson, and I live in Shepherd, Texas, a small and quiet town of just under 2,000 inhabitants. It's the kind of place where if someone gets a new dog, half the town knows its name before nightfall. I've lived here my whole life, raised on the smell of bread rising before dawn. I never found a reason to leave. My grandfather built the bakery. My father maintained it. Now it belongs to me. Shepherd's Bakery, we never bothered to change the name. In Shepherd, the motto, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's more than advice. It's the gospel. Every morning the bell on the entrance rings, and I can practically predict who is coming in based on the time of day. Miss Eleanor arrives at 7 o'clock sharp for rye bread. The Millers appear at 8 to get cinnamon rolls. Life in Shepherd has its rhythms, and I've come to love every one of them. Good morning, Ben, Mr. Carter had said just the day before, leaning over the counter. You have that sourdough bread ready. Still warm, I replied, grabbing a fresh loaf from the shelf. I brought the butter, smiled Mr. Carter, waving a stick as if it were a trophy. I wouldn't miss it. You spoil us. You know that. I chuckled. I just feed the town. You all make it easy. The truth was, I loved what I did. Baking is simple. You take your ingredients, you measure them, you mix them, you wait, and if you have patience and heart, you get your reward. In my eyes, it's a lot like marriage. Katie was not from Shepherd. She was a city girl from New York City. I met her while visiting a cousin in Queens. I still remember the way she laughed at my boots. Do you really wear these things? She asked, touching the worn leather as if it would come to life. Better than sneakers, I had said. Have you ever walked a mile on a gravel road? She hadn't, but she wanted to. That was 24 years ago. We married 4 years later, and somehow I convinced her to move south and settle in Shepherd. The adjustment had not been easy. The pace, the people, the silence was a stark contrast to her previous life. But Katie was tougher than she looked. She managed. More than that, she built a circle of friends. She was now part of a close-knit group of local women who took turns hosting a monthly barbecue, a mix of authentic Southern hospitality and whatever East Coast flair Katie added. People loved it. Your wife had once said, Dale's wife sipping sweet tea. She has the kind of taste that makes Target look like a runway. She's from New York, I replied with a smile. She's someone special, the woman had said. All the women adore her for her fashion styles. As you see, as I always said, Shepherd was the kind of town where nothing went unnoticed. So when Roger Ferguson entered the town one quiet Sunday morning, heads turned. A man in his 60s with well-cut gray hair, tailored clothes, and an air of self-importance that practically shimmered in the Texas heat. He did not seem to belong there. His arrival was not subtle either. He opened a law firm right off Main Street in an old building that had been empty since Old Man Tarner passed away. In a matter of days, a new sign gleamed above the door. Ferguson and Company, attorneys at law. When he entered my bakery for the first time, I was kneading dough behind the counter. Good morning, I said, wiping my hands on my apron. Roger did not respond immediately. He scanned the place as if it were a museum piece, with his lip slightly curled. Is this the only bakery in town? I raised an eyebrow. The only one you'll ever need. Roger smiled smugly. I'll take a sourdough loaf and whatever else is fresh. As I moved to pack the order, Roger walked around the bakery, his loafers echoing against the floorboards. He stopped near the photographs on the wall, black and white images of my father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, all in flour-stained aprons. Family business. I see, Roger said in a voice like silk on gravel. 3 generations. I replied, placing the bag of bread on the counter and ringing it up. Roger paid in cash, putting his wallet away with a flick of his wrist that made sure the engraved initials caught the light. Nice place, old-fashioned. I nodded once. That's the point. Roger offered a tight smile, but it never reached his eyes. Then he left the bell ringing behind him. I watched the door close and muttered, rotten apple. The next time I saw Roger was at a neighborhood barbecue. A week later, I saw Katie come out of the house with a tray of deviled eggs when Roger approached her. Well, said Roger. You must be Mrs. Robertson. Katie looked up surprised. I am, and you must be the new lawyer everyone is talking about. Roger chuckled. That would be me, Roger Ferguson, from New York originally, like you, I hear. She smiled. You heard right. I got tired of the city, he said softly. The noise, the pressure. I made my money and thought it was time for something quieter. This law firm. Just to keep my mind busy. Katie laughed aside. Well, welcome to Shepherd. It's different. Roger leaned in a little with a lower voice. But you seem like someone who sometimes misses the city. She did not answer right away. For a moment, she just looked at him. I saw her eyes take in the glint of his cufflinks, the shine of his shoes, the way his cologne lingered in the air like an expensive promise. It had been years since she had met a man who wore wealth so easily, who didn't flinch at the idea of luxury. It reminded me of how often she had to tell herself no, not to the purses she used to browse online, not to the designer shoes in those catalogs she never threw away. I remembered our arguments. We can't just raise the prices, I had said with my arms crossed and my face tired. People are already struggling. And what about us? She had snapped. What about the fact that we can't even take a vacation without worrying about profit margins and oven repairs? I never changed. When the factories closed and the men lost their jobs, I offered them bread on credit. When costs went up, I cut my own profits instead of passing it on. Everyone loved me for it. They called me a hero. But Katie thought I was a fool. I know now that night, as she stood under the string lights, holding a glass of wine while Roger laughed beside her and the fireflies blinked in the dark, Katie made her decision. I would later find out it had all started with a piece of paper, nothing dramatic, just Katie's phone number. Handed over with a smile and a whispered, "Call me sometime." Roger took it with a smug grin in the way a man might accept an award he already knew he had won. The calls began with Roger telling Katie about his life, how a man over 60 had made a fortune practicing law, his achievements, and his bank balance. It moved to light flirting and then progressed to explicit descriptions of what Roger wanted to do to Katie. Katie was now seduced by the gleam of wealth and the promise of an experienced lover. A week later, the opportunity came. I had driven to Houston to look at bakery equipment. Kevin and Kelly were spending the night at friends' houses. The house was quiet, too quiet. Katie stood by the window for a long time with the phone in her hand looking at the street. Then, with a deep breath, she dialed. When Roger answered, all she said was, "The kids and my husband are gone." "I've been waiting for this," he said softly. "Can I meet you in 10 minutes? She replied, her voice firm. 2 blocks from here, he said, near the old gas station. "I'll be there." She slipped out the back door and walked quickly, looking over her shoulder as if guilt itself might run out on the sidewalk to stop her. In a matter of minutes, Roger's sleek black car pulled up. The passenger door opened. She got in. "Good evening," he said, looking at her outfit with approval. "Just drive," she said quietly. The house he rented on the outskirts of town was impeccable and modern, cold in a way that contrasted sharply with the warmth of our home. She followed him inside without talking much. There were no words, just an outburst. They quickly undressed, and Katie was soon in bed with her new lover. Later, lying in Roger's bed, Katie stared at the ceiling in silence. She could hear his breathing beside her, feel the silk sheets against her skin, and taste the aftershave he wore like a statement. Roger turned over, brushing her shoulder. "Well," he asked, smiling. Katie gave him a small smile. "You don't disappoint," but the truth weighed on her chest. Roger was not a capable lover. He was not me, not in the way he touched her, not in the way he moved or looked at her. There was no depth, no warmth, no love. And yet, there was something else. The softness of the sheets, the wine in crystal glasses, the scent of wealth in the air. Things I would never offer. Roger promised sparkle, ease, luxury, and so the encounters became routine. She was in his bed, often smiling, laughing, whispering, having sex, but most importantly making her feel like a rock star. All this while faking her moans and her words of encouragement. She really wanted him to be a good lover, but she was afraid he would leave her if she told him the truth. Men have a fragile ego, and Katie knew it, and worst of all, she had already inflated his ego. Roger Ferguson was never a man to wait patiently. He was used to getting what he wanted, and now what he wanted was all of Katie. No more secret encounters, no more stolen nights. He wanted her in his house, on his arm, and with his last name. "You have to leave him," Roger said one night as they lay on his huge leather sofa with a fire flickering in the marble fireplace. "Like a fly in the soup." "Katie, is he holding you back?" Katie watched the flames for a long moment before answering. "I know. I'm tired, Roger. Tired of pretending. Tired of getting by, tired of playing the small-town wife. But this town they love him. They'll see me as the villain. Roger turned to her, took her hand. So let them. Who cares what they think? We don't live for them. She pulled her hand away gently. You want to live here, remember? You set up your business here. If I just leave, you'll be in a town that hates us both. Roger's face tightened. Then we plan it right. We control the narrative. That was the moment something changed in Katie's eyes. Fine, she said coldly. If I have to be the villain, I'll be the villain. I remained happily ignorant. I still brought her warm croissants from the bakery. I still kissed Katie on the forehead as she served me my morning coffee. I still thought she was the same woman who followed me from New York to Shepherd, but Katie knew she was not. She knew I would not just give up my children or my bakery. A man like me, all principles and pride, would fight her every step of the way. He's never going to give up custody, she told Roger. And the business was my father's before me. It's not even a marital asset. Roger narrowed his eyes. Then we make it impossible for him to keep anything. We ruin him. Ruin him? She asked, barely whispering. Roger's voice was calm. We pile on charges. We paint him as the abuser. We make it ugly. We make it loud. This town lives on stories, and I'm a damn good storyteller. Katie stared at him. Do you think it will work? It will, he said. We hit him where it hurts. His name, his dignity, his bakery. The town will turn against him. He'll be forced to settle just to make it all stop. It was a cruel plan, but it was clean, ruthless, and Roger believed in its brilliance. Well, said Katie, picking up her wine glass. To Ben's destruction, as the saying goes, the plans of mice and men. 3 days later, I was driving back from Houston. The familiar curve of the road that led to Shepherd felt like a welcoming embrace, until the flashing red and blue lights broke the peace. 2 blocks from my house, a patrol car slid in front of my truck, forcing me to brake. I frowned in confusion until I saw Officer Mark Dalton get out. We had grown up fishing in the same creek and playing ball behind the school. Mark looked uncomfortable as he approached my driver's window. Mark, I asked, rolling it down. Is everything okay? Mark sighed and pulled a manila envelope from under his arm. Ben, I wish it were. I really do. What's going on? Mark handed me the envelope. You've been served. Restraining order. Divorce papers. I blinked at the documents, opening them with a kind of numb disbelief. What the hell is this? Katie filed charges. Domestic abuse. She says you hit her. I looked up sharply, my jaw tight. That's a lie and you know it. I know, Mark said quietly. I'm on duty, but I'm a cop. Ben, it's not my place to decide. I just deliver. My hands were shaking, the paper crinkling in my grip. She filed for divorce and got a restraining order. She claims she fears for her safety. Mark was not looking me in the eye now. You are not to come within 100 yards of the house or the bakery. I stared at him, stunned and silent. I don't believe a word of it, Mark added in a lower voice. This isn't right, Ben. But if you set foot near her, she can consider it a violation. They'll throw the book at you. I folded the envelope slowly and placed it on the passenger seat. Can you offer me a place to stay? Mark nodded. Yes, just for tonight. If you need it. I appreciate it, but no. I took a deep breath to steady myself. I'll find something. I waited for Mark to leave, then pulled out my phone. I hesitated for a second and then dialed a 3-way call. Kevin and Kelly. Dad? Kevin's voice was the first to sound. What's up, Dad? Kelly's voice joined in a second later. Cheerful and ignorant. I cleared my throat. Your mother just served me with divorce papers. She says I abused her. Silence. Then Kevin exploded. What? What? That's not true. She's lying. Kelly cried. She has to be. She is, I said. It's all lies. I've never laid a finger on her. I swear to God I'll make her regret this, Kevin growled. Don't do anything stupid, I said firmly. I mean it. I know you're angry. I am too. But violence won't help us here. She crossed the line. Dad, Kevin muttered. Maybe she picked the wrong family to mess with. Kelly's breathing was ragged. Don't worry, we'll fix it somehow. Just go home, I said, my voice breaking slightly. But keep a cool head. The kids did not answer right away, but then the line went dead. They were already on the move, and as they raced home, with righteous fury in their hearts and justice on their minds, what Roger and Katie had not planned for was taking shape. The unpredictable consequence of falsehood colliding with loyalty, my restraint tested against the fire of betrayal. When Kelly and Kevin got home, they later told me they found the front door wide open, from where laughter and the clinking of wine glasses came. Inside, Their mother, Katie, was sitting on the living room sofa with her legs crossed and a half-full glass of red wine in her hand. Opposite her, leaning back with a casual smugness, was Roger with his button-down shirt open at the neck and a rehearsed smile on his face. Kelly looked at him once and moved forward with her fists clenched. "Who the hell is that man?" she hissed. Kevin caught up with her, grabbing her arm. "Wait," he whispered. "Not like this." They entered the room together. Katie looked up surprised for a second and then recovered. Roger offered a tight smile. "Who the hell is this?" Kevin asked, his voice hard and cold. Katie stood up, smoothing her skirt. "This is Roger," she said calmly. "He's my lawyer." "Your lawyer?" Kevin scoffed. "Now you're drinking wine with your lawyer." Katie crossed her arms. "He's helping me with the divorce. And after that we're getting married." Silence fell. Kelly's eyes narrowed. "You could have told us, Mom. You didn't have to drag Dad through the mud like this." Katie looked away, but did not answer. Kelly stepped closer. "Filing false charges, saying he hurt you. That's low, even for you." Roger shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but Katie lifted her chin. "Roger is a very established man. He's going to take care of me, of us. He said he'll treat you as his own children too." Kelly let out a short, bitter laugh. "So that's it. You did it for money." Katie's eyes flashed. Kelly sneered. "Do you know what they call women who sleep for money?" Katie's glass crashed against the coffee table. "Don't you dare talk to me like that." Kevin stepped between them, his voice low but brimming with rage. "Do you think we'll ever take your side instead of Dad's? Do you think we're going to smile and welcome him into our lives?" He directed his furious gaze at Roger and then back at Katie. "You made your choice, and now all that's left are the consequences. Nothing else." That night Roger stayed over. It was a power play by Katie, making sure the children knew they had to accept this reality. Roger had also told her not to leave the marital home so she could claim the house as a marital asset. Kevin and Kelly did not speak to her. They sat silently in their rooms with their fists clenched and their jaws tight with fury. Every creak of the floorboards in the master bedroom upstairs was like another dagger in their gut. Their mother had brought a stranger into my house, into my bed, the same day she had thrown me out. "This is more than disrespect," Kelly whispered, pacing the floor. Kevin nodded. "She has crossed the line, a very big one. They called me. I can't take it anymore." Kevin said, his voice low but seething. "He's upstairs in your bed with her." On the other end of the line, I was silent for a long moment. "Stay there," I said finally. "Don't leave the house. I've called for reinforcements." "Reinforcements?" Kelly asked. "You'll see," I said. "Just trust me." The next morning the doorbell rang early. Kevin told me he opened it to find two familiar figures on the porch. George and Linda, his maternal grandparents. They had arrived unannounced, their faces grim and silent. "Grandpa," Kevin said. "We're here," George replied quietly. "Where is she?" "Still in bed," Kelly said bitterly. "With him in Dad's bed." George said nothing. He nodded once and walked in. Linda followed him without a word. A few minutes passed, and then the bedroom door creaked open. Katie came out wearing a silk nightgown. Her hair was still messy from sleep. She stopped short when she saw her parents standing in the living room. Her face turned pale. "Dad, Mom," she stammered. George did not speak. He looked her up and down, his eyes laden with something deeper than anger. Then he turned his head away as if he couldn't bear to look at her. Linda stood up slowly, walked over to Katie, and without a word gave her a hard slap across the face. Katie gasped, stunned. Linda's voice trembled. "I'm taking the children with me, Mom." Katie tried to say, reaching out her hand. "No," said Linda firmly. "What you did to me is beyond despicable." She turned to look at George, who still had not moved. "Start looking for a place to hide," Linda said coldly. "Your father is not angry." George finally looked up. His eyes met Katie's, but he is very disappointed. George rose from the sofa, slow and deliberate. The room went silent. He walked towards Katie's bedroom, his eyes cold. Katie instinctively moved to block his path. "Dad, please." George fixed his gaze on her. It was not loud. It was not angry, but it was enough. She froze. The story she had heard as a child came rushing back. Suddenly, her father, the stoic Marine they called Machine Gun George, the man who annihilated an entire unit of Republican Guard commandos during Operation Desert Shield. He was not just her father. This was the man about whom legends were whispered. Linda followed him. When Katie did not move fast enough, Linda stepped in and slapped her again. A dry final one. "Out of the way," she said as she pushed Katie aside. George reached the bedroom door, turned the knob, and opened it. Without a word, he went in. Roger was still in bed, dazed and barely dressed. The door closed with a click behind George. For the next minute, the only sounds that echoed down the hallway were dull thuds, sharp grunts, and muffled cries of pain. Kevin and Kelly stood paralyzed in the hallway. Katie sat down slowly, as if her legs could no longer support her. Then the door opened again. George came out. His shirt was slightly rumpled, but otherwise he was calm, silent. He did not look at anyone, just walked past, and sat back down in the living room crossing his arms. Linda took a deep breath and went into the room. Roger lay on the floor, curled up and moaning. She approached slowly and put her foot on his throat, pressing lightly, not to hurt him, but to make a point. "If you say one word about what happened to you a few seconds ago," she said in a cold, even tone, "I will come for you." "No, he." Her eyes narrowed. "And believe me, he is a man of mercy." She pressed a little harder. "I am not." Roger moaned. "Now nod your head if you understand." Roger nodded. Quickly and repeatedly, the pressure of Linda's foot was enough to stifle any resistance. She stared at him for another moment, then slowly lifted her leg and stepped back without another word. George was already in the kitchen, sitting at the table. Linda joined him in silence. After a moment, George raised a hand and gestured towards Kevin and Kelly. "Pack your bags," he said, his voice calm but firm. Neither of the children questioned him. They stood up without a word and disappeared into their rooms. Meanwhile, Katie was collapsed on the floor, her face streaked with tears. Her sobs now soft and irregular. No one looked at her. 15 minutes later, Kevin and Kelly returned with their bags, standing in the living room, still and watchful. George stood up. He turned to Katie, who remained motionless on the rug, her gaze lost in space. He looked at her for a long second, then spat on the floor. "You stabbed him in the back," George said, his voice low and dangerous. "And you stabbed me in the back." Katie's face crumpled further, but George's gaze did not waver. "I could have ended this fairy tale today," he said, "but he asked me not to." He shook his head slightly. "You have pushed a very good man and his 2 children to the limit. May God have mercy on you." With that, he turned around and walked to the front door. Linda followed him without another word. Kevin and Kelly followed with grim expressions. The door closed behind them. Throughout that day, Katie moved around the house like a ghost. She tended to Roger's wounds in silence and trembling. She cleaned the blood from his mouth, applied an ice pack to his swollen eye, and tried not to look at the bruises forming along his ribs. When she called 911 for help, the voice on the other end was indifferent. "Ma'am," the operator said, "there's been an accident on the highway. All units are busy. They'll be there as soon as they can." But no one came. The sun set. Roger lay once more in their marital bed, moaning softly with every movement. There would be no passion that night, not even resentment, just pain and silence. "I am not a violent man, but I am a man of action." The next morning, Katie sat on the edge of her bed. The soft light streamed through the curtains. She took a deep breath. A new day, she told herself. Maybe the kids will forgive me. She picked up her phone and dialed Kelly's number. No answer. She tried Kevin, and still nothing. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering, unsure of what to do next. Then she called again, but they did not answer. Katie walked with silent, hesitant steps to the nearest grocery store. The morning sun was bright, but the street felt unusually cold. As she got closer, the familiar sound of the entrance bell never rang. Instead, the store owner, Mr. Alberson, came out from behind the counter and stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, blocking her path. She slowed down, confused. "Good morning, Mr. Alberson," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. But he did not respond with a greeting. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and looked her up and down with disdain. Then he spat on the ground, right in front of her shoes. "You have no business here, Katie." "The traitor," he said with bitter emphasis. "Get out." Katie's mouth fell open slightly, stunned. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. She lowered her head in shame and silence and turned around. The walk back home seemed longer than usual. Each step dragged the weight of humiliation. Inside the house, Roger was sitting on the sofa looking through legal documents. He looked up when she came in. "I told you not to leave the house," he said sharply. "I just wanted to get something to eat," she said quietly. "Well, don't. Stay here." He went back to looking at the papers. "I'm working on your claim for the house. It's complicated, since it's not marital property, but I've handled worse. Katie said nothing, just nodded, hugging herself. But that afternoon Roger changed his mind. Pack your bags, he said, standing up. We're going to my house. It's better this way. Katie followed him outside, eager to leave the air that felt heavier by the hour. But when they got to his car, they both stopped. Every single tire was slashed. Roger crouched down next to the car and cursed under his breath. Unbelievable. He got into the driver's seat. Anyway, we'll drive on the flat tires. Just get in. The ride was bumpy, slow, and noisy. Katie kept her head down the whole way, flinching with every jolt and scrape of the rubber against the asphalt. When they finally reached the nearest workshop, relief began to bloom in her chest until she saw the owner pull down the shutter as soon as they arrived. Roger honked the horn. The owner came to the edge of the metal door, his face expressionless. We're closed, he said flatly. Roger leaned out the window. What are you talking about? You're open every day. Closed for business, the man repeated, looking directly at Katie. Roger's hands tightened around the steering wheel. Katie said nothing. As they drove away from the workshop, the sound of the shutters slamming shut behind them echoed in the air. Katie sat still, her gaze distant. The store, the workshop, 2 places, 2 people. Was this the second one? She wondered, her thoughts spinning. Had the whole town turned against her? What she did not realize, what she could not yet comprehend, was that this was only the beginning. Roger and Katie finally arrived at his house, exhausted and irritable. The moment they walked in, the heavy stillness felt strange. Roger fumbled for the light switch. Nothing, not the hum of the appliances, not the flicker of the ceiling bulbs. He muttered a curse and went outside to check the fuse box. After a few minutes of fumbling and examining, he shouted. The wires are fried, he said grimly. Totally burned out. How strange. I had them replaced right after I moved in. Katie stood on the porch with her arms crossed. The tension weighed on her shoulders. Can you call someone? I'm on it, said Roger, pulling out his phone and dialing the electric company. The voice on the other end was polite. We'll be there in a few minutes, sir. Roger hung up and looked at Katie. It shouldn't be long, but the minutes turned into hours. By nightfall, no one had shown up. Just as the sun was setting behind the hills, an electric company truck finally drove up the road and stopped in front. Roger went out to meet them. 2 men got out of the truck. We forgot the cables at the company, one of them said casually. We have to go get them. Roger stared. What? Yes, we won't be long. They got back in the truck and drove off. They never came back. That night Roger and Katie sat in silence, surrounded by shadows. A single candle flickered on the kitchen counter, doing little to warm the atmosphere between them. The house was cold, and the mood was colder still. The next morning a different technician arrived and, without a word, fixed the problem in less than an hour. But the damage was already done. Katie felt as if the walls were closing in on her. The town's rejection, her children's silence, and now even the electricity. It was all piling up. Late that afternoon she could not take it anymore. I need to get out of here, she said suddenly. I need air. Roger looked up from the table. Where do you want to go? Katie hesitated. Then her eyes lit up to Megan's house. It's barbecue night. Roger frowned slightly. Are you sure that's a good idea? She's my best friend. Katie said, her voice firm. She will understand. Besides, she looked at herself and then got up and walked to the closet. It's time for people to see that I've moved on. I'm not hiding. She chose her floral summer dress. The one I always said brought out her eyes, and changed quickly. She brushed her hair, put on a little makeup, and came out of the bathroom with an expression of careful confidence. Roger was by the door waiting. Katie linked her arm with his. Let's go. She planned to show off her new partner, a rich man, a man who in her eyes was better than her husband. Katie arrived at Megan's house with Roger in tow. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the gathering. Laughter and chatter filled the garden. The smell of grilled meat wafted through the air. When Roger got out of the car, he went around and opened the passenger door for Katie. The moment he did, the crowd fell silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, gazes turned. I hope no one messes with the tires, Roger muttered to Katie, his voice tinged with annoyance. I had to work for 5 hours just to get them fixed. Katie let out a light laugh and took his arm, lifting her chin proudly. Her floral summer dress swayed as she walked, each step deliberate, as if she were on a red carpet. She was determined. This was her moment. The last few days had been difficult, yes, but tonight she would show them. She smiled as she saw Megan approach the front door. Megan, she called sweetly. I've brought my new partner. I present to you Roger. She made a grand gesture towards him. Roger nodded, offering a small smile. Megan did not move. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw tensed. She looked Katie up and down, then slowly turned her head and spat on the ground near Katie's feet. Get out of here before I let my dog on you, you slut. Katie froze. Her heart skipped a beat. She glanced towards the side yard, where she knew Bounds was probably resting. The bull mastiff was huge, almost 200 pounds of muscle and fury, and Bounds adored me. I was one of the few people who could scratch the beast's belly without risking a beating. Katie instinctively took 2 steps back. Megan did not flinch. Her voice was icy. There's a word for a woman like you, she said, her eyes burning with contempt. It's called. Katie did not wait. As soon as the word left Megan's mouth, she turned and ran towards the car. Her sandals slapped against the pavement. Her summer dress billowed behind her. Roger, who was still near the vehicle, raised his voice. I'll sue you for this. Megan did not even blink. She turned slightly, narrowed her eyes, and whistled once sharp and loud. Bounds, come here, boy. We have lunch. From the backyard came a deep, guttural bark, low and powerful, like thunder rolling across a plain. The huge bull mastiff burst through the gate with determination, his eyes fixed on Roger. Just that bark made Roger take a few steps back, his face losing all color. He muttered something under his breath and quickly got into the car without waiting for Katie. Megan watched them go, then calmly turned around and closed the front door behind her. In the backyard, the laughter returned. The music resumed. I was sitting in a lawn chair under a tree. Bounds was with me again, lying beside me, his paws in the air and his tail thumping lazily as I rubbed his belly. Megan walked over and stood beside me with her arms crossed. She made a bad choice, Megan said quietly, watching Bounds snort with satisfaction. But we'll make sure she gets what she deserves. 3 days had passed, and Katie felt the weight of the town pressing down on her. Everywhere she went, doors closed literally and figuratively. The grocery store clerk, once chatty and cheerful, now remained stone-faced, arms crossed, refusing to serve her. We're out, he said coldly when she asked for bread, even though the shelves behind him were full. In the cosmetics store, she went for a lipstick only to be told, that shade is not for you anymore, by an employee who then turned her back and walked away. Desperate to feel better about herself, Katie went to the beauty salon. The woman at the counter greeted her with a fixed smile. I need a change, Katie said, forcing a smile. I want to go blonde. Roger likes blondes. The stylist nodded and led her to the chair. Of course, she said sweetly, wrapping the cape around Katie's shoulders. But as the process went on, Katie began to notice a sharp stinging on her scalp. Is it supposed to burn this much? She asked, her voice unsure. It will be worth it, the woman replied in a flat tone. By the time the bleaching was done, Katie could smell the damage. Strands of her hair were coming off in the stylist's hands. When she saw herself in the mirror, an area near her crown was almost bald. Mortified, Katie asked, "Can you fix it?" The stylist gave a small smile. "I'll give you a different cut, something shorter, stylish, no charge." Katie looked at her, knowing perfectly well it had been deliberate. The smile said it all. That night, Katie sat on the sofa in Roger's house with a bottle of wine on the table and a half-empty glass in her hand. Her new, uneven haircut framed her tired face. She was drunk, slurring her words, her voice rising and falling in strange patterns. Roger sat beside her mostly in silence as Katie rambled, barely aware of what she was talking about. Roger was visibly annoyed. He told Katie about the state of his office. I went in today, and there were 5 pigs in my office tearing it apart. Furniture chewed up, trash everywhere. It's a disaster. My assistant also quit, and now I'm left alone to deal with all this. I've even called a headhunting firm to find a replacement. I don't know anymore, Katie. I'm starting to think I made a mistake by accusing me of those things. I didn't know how bad it was going to get. Katie's eyes narrowed. You didn't think it through, Roger. And let me tell you something. I've been faking it, faking that everything was great in bed with you. You were not even close to my performance. Roger recoiled, surprised by her words. You faked it that. That's cruel, Katie. Well, you're not perfect either. Katie snapped, her voice getting louder. You went after a married woman. You came to me with that paper. You gave me your number. You started this. You saw my money and were blinded by the shine. You're just using me, Roger retorted with bitterness in his voice. You've always cared about money and what you can get from me. Katie's frustration reached its peak, and she slapped Roger across the face. Without another word, she turned around and stormed out of the house. Roger followed her quickly, shouting her name. Katie, wait, come back. Let's talk about this. We can work it out, but don't leave like this. Katie stopped at the door, her back still to him. She hesitated, but finally turned around, meeting his gaze. They went back into the house. The next day, the courtroom was tense as the case began. The judge addressed Katie, asking about the domestic abuse charges she had filed against me. Katie stood up, her voice trembling but firm. Ben used to abuse me verbally. She claimed, her words loaded with emotion. Both Kelly and Kevin, my children, stood up in unison. That's not true, Kelly said, her voice strong. Dad is a good man. Kevin nodded in agreement. We've never seen him do anything like that. Mom is lying, he added. The judge listened attentively before calling them to testify. Both Kelly and Kevin testified that I was kind and loving. They also revealed that Katie was involved with Roger and that the whole situation was part of a plan to create problems for me. The judge suspended the session, setting a new trial date. He then ruled to remove the restraining order Katie had on me from my bakery, allowing me more freedom, at least temporarily. Outside the courthouse, Katie's temper flared. She lunged at Kelly and Kevin, her face contorted with anger. You're useless, she screamed, her words sharp and cutting. I was nearby, watching from a distance as the police kept their eyes on me. The officers, seeing the growing tension, approached me. Get back to your car. Ben, we'll handle it, one of them said, motioning for me to leave. I nodded silently, turned around, and walked back to my car. I looked one last time at my children, feeling a mix of pain and helplessness as Katie screamed at them. The police approached Kelly and Kevin, asking them to step back and keep their distance from Katie. The situation had gotten too heated. It was not long before George arrived in his car. Without saying much, he opened the door for the children, motioning for them to get in. They did not hesitate, climbing into the back seat, clearly eager to leave the chaotic scene. George drove off, picking up the children and leaving the courthouse behind. That night, Katie and Roger sat in silence. The weight of defeat hung in the air. The dim light from the broken lamp in the corner cast jagged shadows across the room. Katie's eyes, bloodshot and wild, turned to Roger. He has to disappear, she said suddenly, her voice sharp, trembling. Ben has to disappear. Roger blinked. What, Katie? What are you talking about? No more playing the victim, she hissed. This town has humiliated me. Roger, they laugh at me, at us, at everything we've lost. And Ben, he's the reason. I want revenge. Roger shook his head, his voice soft, pleading. You're not thinking clearly. Let's get some sleep and we'll talk in the morning. No, Katie interrupted, standing up abruptly. There is no tomorrow, not for him. I'll kill Ben and leave this pathetic town. It's over. I'm done being stepped on. Katie, please, you're scaring me. I don't care. You have to help me with this, she said, her eyes flashing. You owe me, Roger. Despite his protests, she dragged him along. The road to my bakery was silent, bathed in the cold silver of the streetlights. Her loaded gun rested on her lap. She parked a short distance from the back entrance. He always comes early, Katie muttered at 4 o'clock sharp. Roger sat still in the passenger seat, his heart pounding and his eyes darting back and forth. Katie, please, let's go home. But Katie had already opened the door. It's too late for that, she said. They got out of the car and started walking towards the bakery. The morning air was still, heavy with tension. Just as my silhouette appeared near the back entrance, a sudden flash of red and blue cut through the gloom. A police siren screamed, followed by the bark of a command. Drop the weapon now. Shit, Roger whispered. Katie froze, then slowly raised the gun. He ruined everything. Katie muttered. No, Roger screamed, grabbing her arm. But she shook him off, intoxicated with rage. Her eyes glazed. She aimed the pistol. Shots rang out, echoing in the air like thunder. In the end, 2 bodies lay on the ground. Katie and Roger were dead. I arrived at my bakery at 6 in the morning, an unusual time for me. The sky was a dull gray, and the streets were unusually quiet. I walked with a slight spring in my step, already thinking about the sourdough I had to prepare. But as I turned the corner, a patrol car was parked near the curb. A uniformed officer got out and approached me. Ben, she said, her voice low and firm. She's dead. I stopped in my tracks. Katie, the officer nodded. We've contacted her parents. They refused to come. You were on the contact list, but we thought we wouldn't bother you. I won't take the body, I replied dryly. The officer did not argue. The church has agreed to handle the funeral. It will be this afternoon. Later that day, under a cloudy sky, the cemetery was almost deserted. No one from the town had shown up. Only me. I was there with my hands in my coat pockets, watching as the gravediggers finished lowering Katie and Roger's coffins into the ground. The workers gave me a polite nod and left me alone with the silence. Once they were gone, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Mark Dalton, it's done, I said. I've transferred $10,000 to your account. On the other end, Mark, the same police officer who served me with the restraining order, chuckled. Thanks. It was a pleasure doing business with you. But tell me, Ben, how did you know she was coming to kill you? My voice held a faint trace of satisfaction. The guys from the electric company owed me a favor. I gave them a line of credit when they were out of work. They installed some bugs in her house. I was listening to them every day. Mark laughed. You're a cold man. I wouldn't have charged you, but I had to pay the others to create the report. My lips curved into a smile. A pleasure doing business with you. I remained silent for a long moment, looking at the freshly turned earth that covered Katie and Roger. The air was still heavy with damp soil and unspoken memories. Then, I slowly moved closer. I unzipped my pants and let out a bitter stream onto the graves. The sound was quiet, but the gesture rumbled with contempt. When I was finished, I zipped up and looked at the mounds with a smug smile. I said, I'll be back on your birthday, on our anniversary, and the day you died. Then I turned around with my hands in my pockets and walked away without looking back. The next day, the town returned to its usual rhythm, as if nothing had happened. No one talked about Katie, no one mentioned Roger. Life went on with a rehearsed indifference. The bakery opened on time. The ovens warmed the early morning chill, and the smell of fresh bread filled the streets, as always. Customers came and went chatting about the weather, the price of gas, anything but the tragedy of the day before. That night, I returned home as I always did, but this time the house felt quieter, emptier. I left the keys on the hook by the door, took off my shoes, and walked to the window. The sky outside was streaked with orange and faded blue. I whistled, sharp and clear, "Come here, boy." From the shadows of the backyard, a small German shepherd puppy came running towards the house, barking with joy. His name was Max. He was barely 6 months old with huge ears and a tail that moved as if it could power a windmill. Max ran inside, skidding slightly on the floor as he reached me. He rolled onto his back with his tongue out and his eyes wide with joy. I knelt beside him, rubbing his belly. "Good boy," I said quietly. "Very good boy."